that it?
Track 1, yeah.
Interesting.
Huh?
If I counted it right, it's like 4 different tracks, right? It's like 4. It sounds. I heard like 4 different switches. I
Yeah.
think.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Um. So one complaint I have with the music industry in general is a lack of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hate like 95% of what I hear out there, right? Because I'm like, it's not interesting. Like it's everybody's repeating themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because apparently it's safe and it makes money, and so I feel like there's this shift happening, and where people seem to be moving towards I don't know, like independence, and they're kind of tired of these systems
Mm-hmm.
that we've kind of adopted, or I don't know, like we agreed to be a part of it
Yeah.
with, I don't know, like complacency. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hearing these conversations all the time now where people are like, buy local stuff, like buy local groceries, local tools, stop, investing in these large corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hearing that just like generally across the board with anything and everything.
Yeah.
And so like I'm thinking about, because I think this all ties in together, and I'm going somewhere with this. is I saw it was a podcast, I think, with Most Def. I forget what he calls himself now. And some lady, they were talking about Drake.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen this? And she's asking Most Def what he thinks about Drake.
Yeah, I saw this. Yeah,
And he's
yeah,
like, shopping. Like, it reminds me of shopping.
yeah, like a shopping mall. What plays in the shopping mall? Or
Yeah,
something.
like, and then he got even a little funnier. He was like, aggressive shopping. But he's like, it's at the mall, and you can get everything at the mall, and it's safe, and all that. And so I really like it when I hear something I haven't heard before.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what I'm getting here. Is it doesn't really sound like anything else. Like there are like hints of like obviously you're inspired by what you're inspired by, but it sounds different than what I normally hear.
Yeah.
Which is very intriguing to me. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I don't know, I feel like I'm probably being repetitive here, but it's just everything is so mass produced and boring and safe. It's just like nothing's interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate it when I see somebody trying to do something against the grain and something different and scary. Because like people say they want to do different things, but they really don't half the time. Because to do something different, you legit have to do something different.
Right.
You can't just say it. I mean, you can, but and when you actually do something different, it's going to be met with resistance. Because it's not what you're normally hearing.
For sure.
So,
I agree. I definitely feel like that's happening across the board. And I think it's been bubbling for a while where people are just kind of getting tired of like the status quo. But I really feel like it's about to bubble over now.
yeah.
I was watching a movie yesterday and like they include whatever people said from Rolling Stones or festivals and whatnot. It was like this genre bending whatever, and I was like, oh, cool, dope. And I'm watching it and I was like, this isn't like genre bending, this is just like kind of a bad attempt at genre, you know what I mean? There's like this one example of another thing that's still kind of in that genre, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus like people that are actually kind of being a little bit like controversial or experimental or pushing that mold or being like avant-garde, you know what I mean? That'll get praised for a decade from now when everybody else is kind of following it. You're even seeing like rappers now that are starting to kind of go a little bit more into alternative, or people are jumping on this country wave now because it's like selling and that's going to become the new norm and whatnot. So even whenever the masses do shift into this new state of whatever it's going to be because of analytics and data and not necessarily the art itself.
Yeah, I feel like there's an appetite for it. But I don't think people know what they're asking for yet. Like I think they know they want something other than what we have.
Right.
You know, because like what we have is just literally like the world's just run by these giant corporations, and then like greed. I was having this conversation yesterday. I'm like, greed and money will take you anywhere, and so like you'll just like if that's your goal is to make money and profit, you know, then you'll literally follow that anywhere. Like anywhere.
Right.
Like you could end up anywhere. I'm talking like doing something crazy or like in a sewer. Like you'll like if there's money, that's the way we go. And so I was like, you got to draw the line somewhere. You got to have some kind of code or standard or
Right.
ethics. I don't know, like something, a rule of some kind to like where you draw the line. And I guess that's what I'm saying is like I feel like people are starting to kind of maybe draw that line,
Right.
putting their foot down and like, you know, we're not going to accept that. Like hate might be a strong word, but like I feel like AI, like they're pushing that shit so hard, and I'm like, it's like they want us to jump into this virtual world and like live there, and I don't think it's going to take the way they think it is. Because I don't think people. I think people want connection. They want direct to consumer. They want.
Right.
They want to meet and feel people.
It's gonna be the same thing that VR was. Like, I thought VR was gonna be like this huge thing, and everybody was gonna fuck with it and whatnot. And like, my friend after a couple months, he was like, "I don't want my Oculus anymore. You want it?" I'm like, "Bro, you're tripping." So he gave it to me, and same thing. Like 3 months in, like I barely pulled that thing out. You know what I mean? So I think AI is gonna be that same thing.
Yeah, it's
like,
not going to take. I don't think
it's available, but it's not gonna be like the new whatever. It's not gonna be PlayStation 2. You know what I mean? In the early 2000s.
What was that thing Apple just put out? The Vision Pro. Like that shit didn't take.
Right.
Like
yeah. It's like you can't swindle us too much. You know what I mean? We can't digress too much from the tangible because I think everything's coming back to I want to touch it, and not necessarily like literally, but even in a metaphorical way. Like I want to be connected to it somehow in a real way.
Yeah, so like just me a long way of saying like what I'm hearing what you're doing is I don't even know how to describe it. Like it's just it's different. Like all I can say like off the top of my head is like it sounds like 4 different like themes in one song. And so like you're playing with that idea of duality, right? And since it's not something normal, you're like how do I even process it? Like
Yeah.
like it would have to be like you're almost changing moods in the song. Like, okay, you're here. Oh shit, now you're here.
Yeah.
Now you're here. So that's my initial thought is like I really like that it's different. It's creative. It's not like anything I've really heard. And then it's also well produced. Like I can hear that. Like I'm hearing how you're mixing it. You mixed it. That's what, yeah. Like I can hear the sounds and like the layers and like things is over here. Like I can hear all that. So like it's well produced as well.
Sick. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cut. This next one's called Hilltop Heights. It talks about suicide, just to be real. This one's interesting because in June I dropped my hard drive on the day that I was gonna back it up. Ironically enough, what a fuck you. And lost like 85% of my work.
You couldn't recover it?
I sent it to the state of the art whatever in LA and paid like an obnoxious amount of money for them to try to like grab it.
They couldn't.
And they couldn't. And they recover stuff with like fire and water damage. So I thought like for sure, you know what I mean? It just fell out of my bag. We're good. Couldn't recover it.
Wow.
So I don't have like the stems and stuff for this particular song. But I think it's the first one where I was like, yes, this is the song that has all of those elements in it. So yeah, this is a special one for me.
So what do you like about that one? Why is that one so special to you?
Like I said, I think it encompasses all three of the kind of pockets, the softer kind of melodic. I don't consider myself a singer, but I can hold a note, you know what I mean? So it has examples of that. It has heavier vocals. All the instruments are natural, which I like. I can actually play piano. Once again, I don't consider myself able to play a guitar, you know what I mean? It's just like, I want it to sound like this. Let me keep like touching shit until it sounds like that, you know what I mean? Enough to at least record it. Yeah, and I just like the chorus, the Yes Lord. My feet are hanging off the 15th floor. My feet are dangling off the 15th floor. And I think it's I've always, and I know like people deal with depression and like handle that differently. So I've never like wholeheartedly wanted to die, but there's been plenty of times where I didn't want to live necessarily. So I think it's the verse for me is a little bit more of like just stream of conscious and thinking about like, or like contemplating if you acted on those intrusive thoughts, you know what I mean? Or like I'm scared of heights, so like that's never gonna be an option for me, you know what I mean? Like jumping off of something like that's dead, you feel me? But yeah, and just kind of, I don't know, it just really kind of like plays with that idea or some of the things that people contemplate but don't say out loud, you know what I mean? And having that dialogue. Yeah, and then like the center of it being so explosive, and just like the instrumental part is kind of like whatever that breaking point is, or that tantrum that you throw, or that hole you put in the wall, whatever, however people like manifest that, and then it just kind of ends on a little bit more of a positive note, you know. Not too like dare commercial, not too youth pastor positive, you know what I mean? But just like a keep your head up, you know what I mean? Like you can start over as many times as you need to. You know?
Are you religious? Oh, okay.
Grew up religious, grew up Baptist, deeply spiritual. I have a relationship with God, you know what I mean? I just don't necessarily put parameters,
a religion
around it.
Yeah.
For sure.
I've been suicidal twice in my life, I believe. And both times, mainly the second time, was what kind of got me in trouble was thinking that I was alone and that nobody else experiences this. And so kind of keeping it internal kind of exacerbated the problem.
Yeah.
And so after I came out of that, you know, thank God, any chance I get, I talk about it. I talk about being depressed. I talk about suicide, and very openly. I made a documentary about it too a while back. And especially like black men, like we don't talk about it that much at all. I mean, I know a lot of people don't, but like I think especially just men in general, we're like, you know, I gotta have it together. Or
right. I think we stigmatize it the most to deal with it as much as we do. Even like older generations. Like I remember my uncle kind of telling me, because my mom and her siblings came up in a not so great household, and my uncle was telling me how he was passing by just a road that they always go down, and it's wild because like I pass by that same road to see them often, and he saw my grandpa there with like a gun on the table, just like looking out into the, you know what I mean? And he was like, I don't know what he was doing, but I think he was like kind of, and like you don't really hear about stuff like that from like older generations, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is wild because it's not a new wave thing. I know like mental health is like this cool, edgy thing to fucking be now, you know what I mean? But it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm on antidepressants. Like I've been on antidepressants since COVID, since I was suicidal. I actually was in a psychiatric hospital. I checked myself in. I was in a hospital locked up for like 3 days, I think. And then one of the conditions for me to get out was I had to start taking medicine. And I'm like weaning myself off of it very slowly now. It's like very slowly, like literally I think I'm on 30 milligrams right now of Lexapro. And I tried to cut back once where it's 3 pills, and one of them, they're like, oh, we'll just break it in half. And it was too much of a jump for my brain to handle. So like it was very like weird, and like I was very like uneasy, and it was just a very uncomfortable experience. So I went back up. Ended up having a conversation with another friend. It was like, no, you can't do it that quick. So you literally got to shave, like just shave a little bit off.
Yeah.
You just do that for like a minute. Just keep shaving a little bit. It's very slowly like moving yourself back. It's like you can't jump that fast.
That's interesting. I just started antidepressant. It's like some E word. I think I'm up to like 20 milligrams now.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of starting that journey of like, is this working? Is this not working? You know?
It takes a minute for them to kick in too. Like it's not quick.
Yeah, that's what she was telling me, because I contemplated it once and started something like a B word. And I was super busy and just kept forgetting to take it consistently. Because for a while I was like very like anti medication.
Me too.
Find holistic ways, but like at one point it's like something's gotta fucking give.
Something's gotta
You
give,
know what I mean? It's like I'll fucking take anything at this point, right? So that's been interesting. And then I'm so new to it that I went to the bar and got my little Moscow Mule.
Yeah.
Got a second Moscow Mule. And then I was just like over the toilet like a college girl. I'm like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're on like medication now. Let's maybe not do that again, because that shit was awful.
Yeah, there's a hell of an adjustment period. Like I drink like bourbon and whiskey and shit, and like I have to do that differently,
right?
Because it hits you different, you know. So I can't be so cavalier with it, and learn that the hard way, you know. But I was what am I trying to say? So yeah, I talk about like it was like I had to acknowledge like, yeah, I'm a depressive person. Like that's just a part of my personality,
right?
And like I get that way. I've gotten that way maybe like 4 times in my life, 4 or 5 times, but like it's consistent. So I'm like, okay, well, this is who I am. So let me take steps now to address that,
right?
You know, and like you said, we don't talk about that. So I talk about it every chance I get. And among a misconception I think a lot of people have about suicide is I don't think people understand that usually what it is for most people is they just want relief from something.
Right.
It could be like chronic pain. It could be depression. It can be anything. And obviously you know that through experience, like having been there, and like every person I've ever talked to that's been suicidal, they all say the same thing. They're like, we just want relief from whatever it is you're experiencing.
Right.
And I became an alcoholic during COVID, and I've always judged alcoholics. And I was like, you know,
right,
like those people, you know, and then that was me. And so like now I have a compassion for it because I was looking for relief, you know, from the depression. So I'm like, yo, if I could be drunk all the time,
right,
that feels good.
Yeah.
You know?
For some people it's sleep, for other people it's whatever recreational thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where kind of like some of my insight came from, where I was like, yeah, I don't want to die, because I had a near-death experience, and like the amount of like regret that you have for the thing that you did that's directly correlated with you're about to die now. I was like, I don't want to feel like that. So like, what is it that I don't want to feel? And it's like, I just don't want to necessarily live right now. So let me like let me take like a small death and like take a nap. let me die for an hour.
Where do we go when we sleep?
You know, let me like temporarily die and feel a little bit better. So that was my thing for a hot minute, just like excessive sleeping.
Yeah.
Or like just like on the flip side of that, like just drowning in work, you know what I mean? Or finding distractions and all these little things anything to avoid being still, you know what I mean?
And
like
sitting
actually,
with it,
exactly.
which is the key to overcoming
gotta
it.
sit with
is
it.
you got to sit with it.
You have to, and that shit sucks.
Yeah, the only way is through. I got a really, really awesome therapist. He's this guy in Washington State, and he's taught me like my dad actually sent me this guy's CDs. This is like in the 2000s, and he talks to like high level executives and people and all these. He's like a guru at this, and I've never heard anybody talk about therapy the way he talks about it. And I wholeheartedly believe that him and his mentor figured out how your brain works. Like every time I've ever talked to him about an issue, he never talks to me about the issue. It's always like, I'm going to talk to you about how your brain works. Right? He's like, if you can understand how your brain works, you can deal with anything. Right? And he said, I won't make it long, but like one of the things he said, for example, is like, think of life as this huge building with like, I don't know, like hundreds of floors, right? And every floor is an emotion. And he's like, where the human species goes wrong is that you live on an elevator. And the whole life, you're going up and down that fucking elevator, feeling everything. And he's like, where people always go wrong is when they stop and get off the elevator. And now you're on the floor. That floor can be any emotion.
Yeah.
And he's like, once you get off that elevator,
You're there.
that's where you live, right? And he's like, people don't know that you can get back on that elevator. And how you get back on that elevator is you almost like it's so simple, it's like confusing. He's like, all you got to do to get back on that elevator is just accept like whatever it is you're going through. Just accept it and allow yourself to feel other things. Because like I think what a lot of people do is like if you're depressed or if you're dealing with something, how you think you deal with it is by like focusing on it. And all you're doing is exacerbating it. He's like, if you can do your best to kind of let go, and if you feel something good, because you will inevitably, like you can't help it. Like you may see something funny, or I don't know, like you may feel just a little emotion other than that depression. And he's like, when you feel that little emotion, he's like, that's the ball game. He's like, the fact that you can feel that small means you can feel that big.
Right.
And you just gotta like let it happen.
But you immediately want to eliminate that because like that's not the part, right?
That's not.
It's like I gotta stick to the bit.
I gotta stick to this.
You know.
Right.
No, that's huge, and it sounds funny, but it's really like that.
Yeah, because you're like guilt, forgiveness, like whatever it is you're trying to figure out.
Right.
It's
gotta
hard
stick to that script.
To not focus on it because like I feel like your people's instincts are like, I got to deal with the problem.
Right.
And he worked with like trauma victims of like rape and murder and all kind of things. And he's like, people fight it because they're like, this feels like denial. And he's like, it's not denial. He's like, denial would be if you were like not wanting to deal with it at all in any capacity. Like denial's avoidance.
Right.
Like, right. He's like, all you're doing, or what he's recommending, he's like, all you do is you just understand that you don't have to figure it out. He's like, just let that shit ride. Like, just let it go. And he's like, you'll find that you'll just naturally move past it. And he's like, you'll forget about it. And he's like, a lot of therapists are like, no, you got to deal with the issue. He's like, all they're doing is re-traumatizing people constantly because they're like trying to figure out. The thing is, you will never find an answer dealing with it. Like the goalpost is just always going to keep moving. But he's like, if you can let go and just let yourself feel it, move past it. It's okay to move past it. It's not denial. He's like, you'll forgive yourself. And he's like, forgiveness, it may sound cheesy, but it's like, that shit is powerful. Because once you forgive, you can forget. And he's like, he's helped so many like people who've had like trauma. Yeah. And he's helped them move past it. And he's like, what happens is you, every time it comes to mind, he's like, each time it, like the intrusive thought or whatever, every time it comes to mind, he's like, it's just like it's just less powerful each time.
Yeah, it's less in the foreground.
Yeah, it's like it comes back. Oh, you trigger, you get freaked out. But it's like if you notice, each time it comes to mind, it's just a little less powerful each time.
Yeah.
And that's why they say time heals all wounds. That's what they're saying. It's like over time, you kind of forget the shit, and you just kind of move past it. But you gotta like let yourself do that. I know.
No, that's huge. I really like that elevator analogy because another kind of component to that is sometimes it takes an elevator a while to get back. You know what I mean? But even like accepting the fact that okay, I'm on this floor right now because I made the mistake of getting off on this floor. But eventually that elevator will come back.
It's
You know what I mean? Whether it's all the way up on this 200th floor, it might take a while to get back down to 100, or maybe it's only one floor up and nobody's on it and it takes less time to come down. But eventually the elevator
gets
will,
back.
You know what I mean? And I think that's huge.
Yeah, he's like human beings are resilient by nature, and he's like if you let your body, he's like if you cut your hand and you always dig in the wound, it can't heal,
right?
Because you just constantly are focusing on the wound. But he's like, if you let it go, he's like it'll do the work for you.
Yeah.
He said all you got to do. He didn't say this specifically, but he's like all you got to do is kind of survive it. If you can just survive it, you'll be good.
Right.
You know, and that's what's got me through it. Like every depression I've ever had is like the understanding that it changes somehow. You know, like how you feel changes without any effort. You just got to like let it happen.
Yeah.
I got ringing in my ears, tinnitus from stress and stuff and COVID. And that was one of the things that sent me over the edge was like constant ringing in my ears. Because some people have killed themselves over that. They're like, because you can't like, it's 24/7. Like it does not ever turn off. It's like when you wake up, you go to bed all day long. And so like, I was so like, I'm like, if this is life, I'm out. Like I can't live like this, right? And so I wanted to like, I was trying to figure out how to kill myself. And I talked about this in the doc because I was like, I got to figure out how to do this and in a way where it's like not horrific for my wife. Like I'm like rationalizing shit. Like
let me set up the room. Let me make sure.
I mean, it's not funny, but
let me wash the dishes real quick. Make sure get the chores done. You know, it's the less shit you gotta worry about.
I was like, I'm gonna go in the garage and like do the car thing where you turn the car on,
just fall asleep,
and my body will just be there. So it won't be like I won't. It's not like shooting yourself or something. Like it'll just be a body. You know,
sorry, I was just picturing you just kind of rational, like just having a logical.
Yeah, I'm like working through it. Like, okay, what's like the
to-do
least
list?
we're terrible way for her to discover my body. Be very considerate,
right? For sure, for sure.
Shit, I lost my thought.
The tinnitus.
So the tinnitus, and so when I talked to the dude's name is George Pransky, I have a bunch of his recordings. I can give them to you if you want. Like they're fucking fantastic. And so I had a session with him, and you know he's like, I can fix it, and I was like, no, you can't. Nigga, shut up. Like,
yes, of course.
I'm really dark.
Of course
like,
you can.
All right, well, you know,
I'm
let's
the
go.
Exception.
You know.
Yeah.
Because you always think you're the exception. You're always like, nah, I'm doing something that nobody's ever heard of, right? And so he was like, yeah, Matt, we're not going to talk about your problem. Again, he's like, we're going to talk about how your brain works. I'm like, nah, man, like, I'm here for the problem, okay? We got to fix that. Like, I can't live with this ringing, right? And so he was like, no, this is what we're going to do. He's like, you ready? I was like, all right. What you about to do? Like, clap your hands?
Right.
I'm like, he's like, the ringing in your ears is not what's bothering you. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Like, that's exactly what's bothering me. Right. He's like, it's not the ringing in your ears, man. It's how you feel about it. I was like, what? He's like, it's how you feel about it. That's what's like got you all fucked up. You know, it's how you feel about it.
Right.
And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, if you notice while the ringing's going on, your emotions, you'll go through a different range of emotions. You might be like really mad. You might be kind of mad. You might get tired. You might see something and think it's funny, but be like, nah, I can't laugh at that because I'm dealing with this right now. Like, but he's like, what's changing? He's like, the ringing ain't changing.
Right.
The ringing is just constant. He's like, you're changing.
Yeah.
You're on that fucking elevator. Right? And he's like, all you got to do is allow yourself to feel again. Allow yourself to be on that elevator, and try not to. You don't have to figure out the ringing.
Right.
Just let it be. Just let it ride, man. Which was like extremely hard, right? Because you're like, I got to deal with this fucking problem, man. Like, I can't work. I can't do anything. And he's like, accept it. He's like, just let it be and watch how you feel about it's going to change, right? So long story short, that was 2020. I still have the ringing. It has not stopped.
That's wild.
And I've gone weeks without hearing it. But like, if I focus on it, I'm like, there it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But like, my brain just tuned that shit out.
That's wild, because I've had tinnitus, but it is a couple of seconds and then it goes away. Yeah, it kind of fades in and fades back out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And he's like, he was telling me, he's like, it's in my head. I went to an ear doctor. He told me the same thing. He's like, it's not an audible sound. Like, tinnitus is in your brain.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not out here in the world. He's like, it's in your head.
Right. Your brain's kind of creating it.
Doing it. And so you can't turn it off. You know, but he's like, you know, you'll feel different about it. You'll see.
Yeah. That's wild. That's wild.
And I'm like, the dude was right. Because, like, I still have it. And, like, I don't give a fuck about it.
Yeah, that felt like a TED Talk. Because the closing line was like, I still have tinnitus. And I was that was a standing ovation.
Yeah, I still have it. Like, this shit hasn't... Well, that hasn't changed, but I've changed. I got back on the elevator.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I love that you're dealing with these issues, bro.
That's hard. That's so hard. Damn. So yeah, that climactic part. Not happy about the fry screaming, so I think I'm just gonna go for it and like actually scream. Yeah, it just doesn't have like, it's not giving what I need it to.
Okay.
You know.
And you said you think it's an interlude, or that's just where it is now?
I definitely like the placement of it. It feels like an interlude because originally it didn't even have like the verse. You know what I mean? But yeah, it just kind of feels like a palate cleanser. You know what I mean? Where everything just kind of gets slower. It doesn't have like a whole lot of instrumentation.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like talking to you. You know what I mean? Like the little small heart to heart before we close it out.
It's peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a peaceful vibe for me. I didn't catch all the lyrics, but some of them I thought was interesting where you said the 20, once you break it, it's going.
Facts. Especially in high school, like I would hold on to a dub for like dear life, because as soon as you break it, just somehow it's just gone.
Yeah. I always asked my dad for 20s growing up. Like, Dad, can I get a 20? You feel like you do so much with $20.
Right. But no matter how you break it, whether it's like $1 worth of it, by the end of the week, it's gone. At the end of the day, it's just like 20 felt like so much, and now I only have 2 left or a 5 left or whatever.
Yeah. I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 79, so like the 90s were my teenage years. And we had a lot like 20s. Like you could get gas with 20s, you get some food. Like you do a lot with a 20.
Yeah. And even like that's weird, because it's like I was born in 96, so I didn't like live through the 90s. But I'm from I'm from South Carolina, so there's already like we're not hip to shit until 5 years later. And then I'm from like a small town, so like a lot of, whenever I talk to people that are older than me that like were actually teenagers like in the 90s, I was like, yeah, I kind of like experienced that too. Like I thought the Game Boy was like a early 2000s thing. Like that shit came out in the early 90s. It's like I just didn't have a Game Boy until the early, like I had the MP3 player. We was on VHS, you know what I mean, Channel 3 and blah 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 blah. It's like, oh, that wasn't an early 2000s thing. It's just I was just late to the party.
Yeah, you said what? South Carolina?
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never been.
Or even like lingo and stuff. We're just like a little, historically, we're just late to do everything now that I think about it. We're late to all the parties. We didn't let niggas marry niggas and vice versa until after everybody else, you know what I mean? We fucking seceded from the union. We'll be the last to make weed legal, you know, just all types of
stuff. I felt that way. Like I'm from Ohio, and I felt that way in Ohio. Like Ohio always felt lame to me. As far as culture is concerned, because we never invented culture. We just received it.
Which is also wild, because everybody in the entertainment space is a certain degree of separation from South Carolina.
Really?
For real. Either they have like a parent that was there, or they're from there, or whatever the case may be. So it's always interesting to me that we're not like a hub for stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's yeah. And I love South Carolina, and I'm big on like doing things out of there, because it just feels like people have to leave to get things going.
Yeah, I don't feel like
It's
that's
weird.
true anymore. Like maybe back in the day, you would have to go to like New York, LA,
Mm-hmm.
or Atlanta or something. I feel like now you can do anything anywhere.
Right, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And then fucking people will leave thinking that it takes them leaving to get popping. It's like, all right, well now you're just a fish in an even bigger fucking pond. Congratulations.
Yeah, I never felt good about like I would go to New York and LA a lot, and I never felt good about jumping into those cities. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's too much going on,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
They're just so big. I love New York still, but I don't know. Like, I get it. Like, if you can make it in New York, like if you make it in New York, you've kind of made it because it's so fucking big.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many eyeballs on it,
For sure.
you
For
know.
sure. As a starting, I think it's just a matter of like where you start. You know what I mean? Because like a lot of even in my situation, it's like I was in Colombia for like a decade, and so like I know people and can do shows and this, that, and the third. It's like, but when you leave there, like none of that shit matters here in Dallas. You know what I mean? It's like you still an open mic night nigga right now. You know what I mean? We don't give a fuck what you did in Colombia and performing at the Senate and blah blah blah. Like we don't know you. You know what I mean? So a lot of people think that they can take what they did in a certain area and take
Move
it
it.
somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's like you got to do your due diligence wherever you move. You know what I mean? So it's like, cool, leave your area whenever it becomes inconvenient to, and everybody's journey is different. You know what I mean? So like take that with a grain of salt. But it's like I want to move to LA whenever it becomes inconvenient for me not to be in LA, or move here when it's inconvenient for me not to be there. You know what I mean? But yeah, the world's so small, and the internet is a very real thing. So it's like it don't matter where you're at, pick a place and build.
No.
I'm gonna have to find that poem and send it to you. But this guy, he was like, at the age of 4, I was the best jazz piano player in the world, and he keeps going through these different ages and like calls back to whatever. He was like, at age 13 I realized I can't play the piano. You know what I mean? Or at age 18 I realized my dad wasn't a superhero, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it was a really cool way of kind of, you could be any and everything, and you believe you're any and everything whenever you're a kid, and then just kind of these different checkpoints where you
Yeah.
aren't a genius anymore, or aren't the best piano player in the world because you actually can play, you know.
Yeah, man. I think human beings are fascinating, and I don't think we understand 30% of what we are. Like, I think we're multidimensional beings. I think there's a lot of things going on that we simply, I think the universe gives it to us, but like certain people, I think you see get it and you're like tuned in. Because George Pransky, this guy, he talks about thought, capital T, and he's like, we live in thought the way a fish lives in water. And he's like, there's an intelligence behind your thinking. I think probably over half the world, humanity thinks that they're responsible for their thoughts, right? And he's like, your thoughts are happening to you, and all you're really doing is reacting to them. And so that was one of the things that got me at my first depression was I thought I was responsible for my thinking. So like any negative thought I had, I was like, I'm a bad person or this, whatever. And he's like, you can't control what goes in your head.
Right.
You can control what you do with it, you know. But he's like, I don't know why we have intrusive thoughts. I don't know why we have negative thoughts. I personally think we have negative thoughts to evolve. I think that's the purpose of negative thinking, or bad things that happen to you. I think the whole point of those things is to evolve. It's like to educate, to learn. Because if you look at anybody who moves through negative thinking and trauma, they're constantly like in a state of evolution. because they're constantly like overcoming or learning about things.
Right, it's just like the byproduct of being a rational being. Like there's. I think we also take for granted like how capable of thought we are relative to other living things. Like the fact that we're aware of our own mortality is not something that's shared amongst the majority of living things. Or the fact that we have rationale, and you can't have rationale if you can't play with the idea of good and bad. You know what I mean? Like one can't exist without the other.
Without
So
the
it's
other.
like you think about those things simply because you're capable of thinking about those things.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with you. And I mean, obviously, like nature versus nurture and blah, 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 blah. But on a fundamental level, you think like that because you're capable of thinking like that.
Yeah.
You know? And if you weren't, then you wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
You know?
Yeah. So yeah, I think humans are fascinating, man.
For sure. Yeah, like I said, I think that one's like a little bit more like traditional, kind of having like the heavy pitch correction on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one actually, for me, I love the music on this one the most. Because like I'm a junkie for cinematic sounds. That's I think you had like vocals or something in the beginning. I can't remember, but like I love Hans Zimmer. I don't know if you know, like
A beast.
Like I could listen to Hans Zimmer the rest of my life.
He's not human. He's not human.
You know, so like that feels like that to me. So like I love those kind of melodic like sounds and tones, and that's what that reminded me of. So not saying that the other ones were like bad or anything, but like that one, like the music for that was my favorite. Yeah,
because it felt so different that I was kind of contemplating whether it like fit. You know what I mean? But I was like, this sound, because it sounds cinematic, it almost feels like a kind of leading you out of a project. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's sort of why it like still fits to me.
It feels like it fits to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
With everything else I've heard. Yeah, those sounds were like, I like that. I like how that one sounded like a lot. And I'm being very greedy in my mind here. I'm like, yo, how can I use this dude for my shit? Like, I'm a junkie for like creativity and sounds and these kind of things, and I can get carried away. I'm trying to stay in that creative genius space.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm attracted to it. So this is attractive.
For sure.
These sounds and things. I like it.
People that know my music already or hear it for the first time, you know what I mean? Is it still somewhat palatable enough to give it a chance? You know? Not necessarily that is the intention isn't to make it palatable, you know what I mean? But I don't want to make it so exclusive that other people can't, you know what I mean?
Because there's this energy that you have that's interesting to me. But like I said, this track reminds me a little more of like you're mixing. It sounds like you're mixing like, you know, some rock, punk rock, and then some rap. Because I really like when you went into that rap cadence. Dun, 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 you know, like I like that's probably my favorite part in that song. But yeah, those are my immediate thoughts.
For sure. I think and for a while, like I would put out music to where it's like this song was specifically like this type of pocket, to where it's a little bit more punk and metal or whatever the case may be, whereas this one was a little bit more like boom bap and trap, or this one was more melodic and softcore, and it from what people have told me, it didn't come across as inconsistent, but for me it's like, all right, well, if you heard this one, then you wouldn't have known that these other two existed. You would have just thought like, okay, this is the type of sound that person makes. So I spent probably like almost a year and a half really trying to figure out musically how to put all three of those examples into one song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and have it flow.
Right. And it's been a super fun process, and I still don't think I'm like quite there, but I think all of these songs are really good examples of that. And so that's why, one, I wanted it to be an album, and then two, I'm super excited about it musically. And then just kind of like all the things that have been happening in life while creating this just makes like the whole project just feel real special. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, it's similar to the first one but different.
And then even for that one, it's like you get the example of rap towards the end, but it's like you have to wait like the whole song to get that example. You know what I mean? Versus if that was the first thing you hear, you would just assume that the entire song was punk or whatever.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's funny because what I do a lot because like I collect any and every kind of music, and what I find myself doing a lot lately because so much turns me off. I'll listen to the first, like 10 seconds. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see what this was about.
Yeah.
And I'll move on, and I'll move on. And I've made the mistake of doing that. Like, I literally had this one track, I forget the artist, and it was on somebody's album. It was a long time ago, and I listened to, like, the first, like, 30 seconds of it, and I was like, nah. And, like, a year later, a friend of mine was like, yo, I want you to hear this track by this artist, and I listened to it and I was like, oh, I've heard this before. I was like, I don't like this. And like towards like the halfway point or a little after that, it like switched and it became something I really liked. And I was like, oh, like I've been missing this for like a year. I just wrote it off, but like if like so people knowing like if that's what you do, then you probably want to stay tuned in to see where it's going.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I've always kind of like, even if I didn't like a song or whatever, I would like scroll to the end. And now that you say that, I think it's because I grew up on like listening to M and whatnot, but whenever it would be like a D12 song, I would always kind of like scroll to find an M's verse, you know what I mean? Or same thing with like Pac, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know any of these people. Where's Pac's verse or whatever? So I would always kind of like skim through songs.
Yeah.
Or that was back when like you actually had a third verse, you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, I really like the third verse. Let me go to the last quarter of the song to hear that third verse or the bridge or whatever.
Yeah.
Versus now, like that song structure isn't the same. Like rarely you'll have a third verse unless it's a feature, or you might not have a bridge unless it's like R&B and whatnot. But like a third verse in hip hop now is like, that's too long of a song, you know what I mean?
I hate that.
Or people feel like it's too long of a song.
Yeah, I don't like that. I can't recall. Am I hearing choruses?
Nah, that chorus was the musical like breaks. Yeah.
Okay. See, you're even switching up. Yeah, okay.
I think this third song is the first kind of chorus.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm trying to think if any of these have like a regular.
I don't think the first one did, right?
First one didn't. If you know, you know. The last song has a traditional chorus. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like a little like Linkin Park to me.
I can hear that.
Where they go back and forth between like the rock and the rap. Are those different lyrics? Okay. From the other version? Okay.
Because originally it was just, let me just take all the lyrics and quite literally just make like a different instrumental for it. I was like, I like, because at first it was going to be like, this is the 5-track project, and then here's a separate blue version that's to be listened to independent of this one, and then a red one that's supposed to be independent of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that doesn't really like make sense. If I put them all together, then the track list feels a little bit more like an album, and it'll kind of give me an opportunity to figure out how to like musically blend them all together. So it felt like a little bit more of like a challenge I wanted to explore. And then in that, I was like, all right, well, this beat kind of slaps. But I don't really want to like talk. I don't really want to say like the exact same verse or like, you know what I mean? Musically, this chorus would be cooler, or how can I flip this from this part and just kind of interpolate it rather than just like copy and pasting it onto a different instrumental, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, you think about like I don't know if there's rules for a remix, but like you think about remix, it's the same song.
Right, and the difference
lyrics.
is there's a feature on this one, or somebody else is
Yeah.
the new factor that makes this
But they
different.
don't typically change the lyrics,
Right.
right? No, I don't think they do.
It's just like a lot. When I think of remix, like something is added.
Uh-huh.
Either a feature is added, and sometimes when that feature is added, the original artist might add, you know what I mean, something else to it. But yeah, I haven't experienced a remix to where something was like taken out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you removed lyrics and put in different ones. I got to think about that. That's very curious to me because I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen that or heard that. That's an interesting idea.
Word.
Nice work.
Thank you. And nothing's new under the sun, so I'm sure there's some motherfucker that has like a great example of it.
Oh yeah. Like,
So I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to introduce some concepts that haven't seen as much light, maybe.
yeah, we're all pulling from the same source.
Right.
Like, you know,
For
however you
sure.
believe that, but like we're all pulling from it. So there's have definitely got to be similarities out there.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think I heard somebody say they were like, originality is when all the things that you pull from are indistinguishable. And I was like, that's a really cool way.
Wait, say that again.
Something's original whenever all the things that you pull from are indistinguishable. So it's like, let's say I'm inspired by like Kendrick Lamar, and then maybe I'll make something that sounds just like Kendrick Lamar's music. That's not original, or like even, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like trap artists that like have kind of like the same approach to something. Like that's not original.
No.
But what about the people that listen to Kendrick Lamar, but also listen to System of a Down, but also listen to this thing, and also listen to that thing, and then that's a huge melting pot from 100 different influences, and how they utilize that becomes something original. You know, because it pulls from so many different things. Versus, I look up to this person, I'm gonna make stuff that sounds just like these 2 or 3 things.
Which I'm not a fan of that. I don't like that. That's not interesting to me. Cool.
But yeah, super stoked about it. Yeah. I like this idea of and it's inspiring other ideas. I'm excited to see how this works, and then to find some other kind of creative way of putting music out there, and then bringing in other art forms to do it.
Yeah, I like that idea of what you were saying, straight to the consumer off your website. Because, you know, I get the appeal of like these streaming services, right? It's easy access, right? But you're also in a sea, you know, of just noise.
Right.
I mean, and you still are when you're putting it on your platform or your website or whatever. But I just have a thing where I'm like, I'm tired of these corporations.
Yeah. And it just makes more sense for a smaller artist, I think, to do that. Because, like, what I make off of the $10 it took you to come to a show, I would need thousands of streams for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, even if 10 people buy this project, you know what I mean? It's like, cool, I made $100 or whatever the case may be. I would have needed 100,000 streams to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, I shit. What was I trying to say? Yeah, I think I may have said it earlier. Like trying to appeal to a mass audience, you appeal to no one, right? So, I think if people focus more on what they're doing, and you're for somebody, not everybody.
Yeah.
Or what's it saying? Is that it? Like,
yeah, that sounded right.
I'm like, is that it?
You're for somebody, not for
You're
everybody.
not for everybody. You're for somebody. But that somebody is like there's multiple of that somebody.
Right.
You know.
And they're looking for you. And
Yeah.
it's like your responsibility to find them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
But I think so much shit today is they're trying to appeal to such mass audiences because they want the highest profits. So like I think Marvel's like a perfect example of that. Like,
Yeah. And then smaller people take that blueprint and think that it applies to them. It's like, yeah, Marvel's appealing to an already mass audience, and so they have to keep that up. Versus like, you can't appeal to a mass audience because you don't have a tiny audience yet. It's like, yo, serve those 10 people that really fuck with you, and then find 10 other people that look like that, instead of neglecting that one person that always comments on your stuff because you think they're annoying. It's like, yo, that motherfucker comments on all of your stuff. If you don't try to sell him a t-shirt or something, bro,
like talk to that person.
Right, the fuck are you doing?
Because there's probably thousands of that person.
Yeah, and that's something I really had to like come to terms with. It's like, yo, it's not annoying that I only get 1 or 2 comments on a post and it's the same person. It's like, bro, sell them some shit. So I'm really like leaning in on like my small community and like giving them stuff and getting them involved and engaged. And
I know so many people who have like thousands of like social media followers. You know, like 75 to 100. You know, and these people don't like have money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's facts. It's facts.
Like, I'm like, do you want to be popular or do you want to, you know, build something, right? So like me, I got 2,246 followers, right? I probably know about 2,000 of those.
Yeah.
You know, I've had some interaction with these people, right? And then there's obviously like randos that don't follow you.
And that's why you're doing well. It's like, it's not that your social media is a reflection of what you do off of social media, whereas everybody thinks that social media is going to transcend them into whatever they're trying to live in the real world, which certainly exists, but it's like that should be collateral from what you're actually doing in real life, you know?
Yeah.
Or a reflection of the impact you have on real life.
Yeah, like I know a lot of those people, and a lot of those people do business with me. You know what I mean? I have a relationship with those people. Right. So Yep.
Cool. That's all I got, man.